Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, very excited to be with you on this fantastic Thursday show. So, again, it's during the NBA Finals, so we adjusted the schedule for Carving It Up Live as opposed to a Wednesday show. It's a Thursday show, and obviously we'll be back tomorrow on Friday for some Game 4 talk of the NBA Finals. Listen, I don't know what it is, but I cannot, for the life of me, correctly predict an NBA Finals that do not involve my team in it, the Golden State Warriors. It's unbelievable. That's a real stat, by the way. I'm predicting NBA Finals since I was an NBA fan back in 2013-14. Yet to get one right that doesn't involve the Warriors. But 3-0 Boston, they're about to go win the NBA championship. No team, as we all know, and the old refrain is that no team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit to win a championship. I'm going to start by discussing Luka, though, because he is really the story, I think, of last night. Discuss him in just a second. Also, on the Boston side, why a lot of folks, and myself probably first in line, need to apologize to Joe Mazzulla. That in about 12 minutes. Also, carving out the context, the late, great the late, great Jerry West passed away yesterday, and just wanted to pay tribute to him in a way that I think would be the best way I can in terms of what I think the spirit of all successful people are, and Jerry West signified that and personified that as much as any human being as you could possibly imagine. Not to mention the guy was as kind of an individual as you could possibly know. That and carving up the context in a half hour. Aaron Rodgers skipping minicamp. More on that in 45. I want to say my whole take for them. At the end of today's show, why JJ Redick, I think, listen, he's a young guy. Wait another hiring cycle. Don't take the Lakers job, JJ. Don't do it. That at the end of today's episode of Carving Up Live. But first, Luka Doncic is going to have to make a big career decision starting in a few days when the NBA Finals conclude. So the Boston Celtics won Game 3 last night, 106-99. This is, by the way, the third time in this series that the Celtics, in all three games, obviously, have held this high-powered Dallas Mavericks offense to under 100 points. 89 in Game 1, 98 in Game 2, and then 99 last night, obviously with Luka Doncic fouling out in the last 4 minutes of this contest. Bryson, what do you mean by decision? What's that supposed to mean? Well, I'll tell you exactly what it means. So every NBA every NBA great, whether you're a great player or whether you are a legend, if you're an elite basketball player in the greatest basketball league on planet Earth, everybody's going to have a low moment. And this is kind of the low point for Luka. He's not having a terribly efficient series. We already knew Luka wasn't a good defensive player. I'll show a stat to kind of back that up in just a second. The analytics are off the charts on how bad he is. And also, you have a bigger microphone because it is the finals, or a bigger spotlight on the fact that the Duke whines and complains to refs more than any superstar I think I've ever seen in my life. It's unbelievable. And all of those things have been amplified. So this is the most I think Luka Doncic has ever gotten criticized for his play in the playoffs, because by and large, he's been a great playoff performer this NBA. And by the way, he hasn't been bad in the finals. He hasn't come up small like Magic did in 84, like LeBron did in 2011, like my man Steph did in 2016. He's not been bad, but he has not been Luka Doncic. He's going to have to make a decision, and here's what it is. So Michael Jordan, after the 1989-90 season, Chicago Bulls got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they fell to the eventual back-to-back champion, bad boy Detroit Pistons. Now, famously in that series, there were the Jordan rules, as it became known as, when the Detroit Pistons, in today's NBA, the entire team would be ejected. Heck, I think 10, 15 years ago, the entire team, Pistons team, Lambeer, Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, all of them would be thrown out of games in the modern NBA because it was not just a level of physicality that was maybe over the line to a degree, but it was also almost like tackle football and basketball. And I'm not saying that as a Jordan stan. I think LeBron's the GOAT, just for the record. Point is, Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest player ever, and certainly the best player in the world at that time, made a decision that offseason to say, okay, you know what? Detroit is playing me not only physically, but kind of bordering on dirty. I'd argue crossing the line on dirty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get with my trainer, a man by the name of Tim Grover, probably the best basketball trainer of all time. And I'm going to bulk up. I'm going to get stronger. And when we see this team again, we see these bad boy Pistons, they're going to have hell to pay. Well, come 1991 Eastern Conference Finals, the Chicago Bulls swept the back-to-back champion Detroit Pistons, went on to win their first of 6 NBA titles. Michael Jordan adapted beautifully to it. He had a crossroads moment in his career, and he chose the road that wound up getting him 6 NBA titles. LeBron James, similarly, 2011, no question the low point in his career. He had just moved to Miami. It was the most scrutinized and criticized decision I think ever made by an NBA player as it pertains to off-court business or joining a new team. There's no question. The decision, despite the fact that it raised millions for Boys and Girls Club, was highly scrutinized, and LeBron still, to a certain degree, is criticized for that to this day. Gets the NBA Finals, Miami Heat, Dallas Mavericks. Heat are up 2-1. LeBron James plays about as poorly as we've ever seen him play at any stage of basketball in his life. At one point, I think it was either Game 4 or Game 5, had an 8-point game. And the Heat go on to lose the last 3 games in that series. The Mavs wind up winning one of the most shocking NBA titles ever, and LeBron was, rightfully so, eviscerated for that. So what did LeBron James do over the course of the ensuing few years as he wound up getting to 8 straight finals? He improved his jump shot, which he's still doing to this day. He just had his best 3-point shooting season this past season. Improve his jump shot, right? Adjust his game. Maybe commit more to the defensive end as an on-ball perimeter defender. If you want to look at the other side of that coin, if we want to look at other guys who have been at crossroads moments of their careers, great individually. We knew Michael Jordan was great in 1990. I wasn't around at the time, but folks knew Michael Jordan was great and the best player in the world in 1990. Duh. Folks knew LeBron was the best player in the world at that point in 2011. Duh. But they adjusted. They played more of a team-oriented style of basketball. Someone who did not make a decision similar to that of LeBron and Michael, a man by the name of Russell Westbrook. So after Kevin Durant left him in 2016, in the 16-17 season, Russell Westbrook famously averaged a triple-double. It had not been done in basically a half century since Oscar Robertson did it. Russell Westbrook averages a triple-double, wins league MVP, and the Thunder get bounced in the first round in gentleman's sweep fashion by the undermanned Houston Rockets with James Harden. Not a great end of their season, certainly not a great end for a guy who had a remarkable individual season. Russell Westbrook had a decision to make because that offseason the Thunder brought in an older but Carmelo Anthony and a prime Paul George. Russell could have made the decision, hey, I'm going to shoot less because I'm not a very good shooter. Either I'm going to improve my jump shot or not shoot as much. And that guy, Paul George, who's led multiple Eastern Conference Finals teams, I'm going to let him be the focal point of our offense, kind of the driving force. And Russell kept taking a million shots, didn't adjust, didn't improve his jump shot in that span at all. And we all were left sort of wanting a little bit more out of Russell Westbrook. When at that time, I don't think he was the best player in the world, but he was the league MVP. Luka Doncic is going to have to make a very similar decision. So he is, in my mind, I've got him right now as the second best player in the world to Jokic. He's no lower than 3. If you want to put Giannis ahead of Luka, I got no issue with that. I can't put anybody else. I love Steph. I don't think he's better than Luka right now. Can't put LeBron over him right now. He just got gentlemen swept by the team that lost to the team that Luka beat in 5 games. Point is, Luka's great. We all know that. Again, he's not having a bad NBA Finals. Last night, 26-6-6. What it is, though, and Brian Windhorst he elaborated on that on ESPN with Scott Van Pelt after the game, talking about how Luka's inability to take accountability for either obvious foul calls on his part, on the fact that, again, even if there's marginal contact, or in some cases no contact, he's constantly whining and groaning and moaning with the officials, and yet somehow expects a different whistle. You know, when you tell somebody they suck at their job constantly over and over for 2.5 hours, my guess is they're not going to be overly sympathetic to you. They're just not. Not only that, but the lack of, it's not that Luka is a bad defender. We've had players in NBA history. Steph Curry's a prime example. Steph will never be regarded as a great defender, nor should he be. You cannot say that man does not try on the defensive end and sometimes give guys problems. Luka doesn't even attempt it. We can show you a stat right here. All stats provided by our friends at StatMuse. All graphics provided by my man Alfred Parsard Jr. Here's Luka Doncic defensively. Luka has allowed the highest blow-by percentage on drives in a series. In the last 10 seasons, 67.7%. This is like second and third level analytics stuff, but 67% of the time in this series, Luka Doncic is blown past on a drive. Luka also holds, in the last decade, the second and third highest spots in that category. The Clippers in the first round drove past him 65% of the time when he was the primary on-ball defender, and the Thunder did the same 59% of the time in the second round. Not only that, but it goes to why the reason I bought into the Dallas Mavericks over the second half of the season when I didn't buy them when they were a 500 team through most of the regular season to start, and the reason I picked them to win this series, was because while Luka was the focal point, him taking, the film says it, the numbers say it, in some spots, a step back. Let me get the ball to P.J. Washington in the corner. Let him hit a couple threes. Let's throw the lob to Jarrett Jones Jr. and to Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. Hey, let's let Kyrie, this guy over here who's hit maybe one of the biggest shots in finals history, let's let him get some touches. Instead, and I talked about this on Monday after game 2, and some of the credit goes to Boston because how great a defensive team they are on the half court. But Luka has gone back into his bad old habits, and playing that style one-on-one basketball does not win championships, and I don't think it ever has. Even Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, once Shaquille O'Neal left, was the ISO king. 81-point game, had the crazy streak of 40, 50, 60-point games in the mid-2000s, was unbelievable and couldn't get out of the first round. They got him Pau Gasol. He learned to defer to teammates again, and guess what he did? He went to 3 straight finals and won the last 2, and has 5 titles as opposed to the 3, and has 2 MVPs as opposed to 0. Luka's a great player. Nobody on God's green earth who watches a second of basketball is going to deny that. But it is the lack of accountability, and it is the unwillingness to adjust to what Boston is throwing at you. And it's moments like this at post-game pressers.
Luka, what did you think of the whistles that went against you in the fourth quarter?
I mean, I don't know. We couldn't play physical, so I don't know. I don't want to say nothing, but, 6 foul in the NBA Finals, where I'm like this. Come on, man. Better than that.
But you put yourself in that position. You weren't playing any defense throughout the course of that game. You commit 2 bad fouls at the end. Yes, were you trying to take a charge on Jaylen Brown? Sure. Was it in theory, an unselfish play, which taking a charge tends to be? Sure. But you got to know in the back of your head, okay, I got 5 fouls. I'm the best player on the court. And our only chance, Dallas obviously is down 21 in that game. I'm the primary reason that we got back into the game. I got to stay here for the last 4 minutes. If we lose this game, series is probably over. Luka would never admit that, nor should he, but the series is over. It's 3-0. No team's ever come back from 3-0. It's not going to happen this go-around. So, for Luka Doncic, this is going to be a crossroads moment. I don't look at this as a referendum on Luka, because this has been the best year of his career as it pertains to team accomplishment. And frankly, individually, he very well could have won MVP this regular season. But the fact remains, this style of basketball has never won a title to my recollection in NBA history. Listen, Michael adjusted in 1990. LeBron adjusted in 2011. Russell Westbrook didn't adjust in 2017. I mean, Carmelo Anthony didn't adjust in like 2010, 11, 12, that era of his career when he could have potentially been a part of winning basketball, but decided to be a same old ISO jump shooting defensive liability. Luka's great. The Mavs, even if they lose this finals, will have had an excellent regular season, exceeded just about everybody's expectations. But this is kind of the crossroads moment of Luka's career, where 10 years from now, when we're discussing Luka, whether it's at the end of this career or has retired, who knows? We're going to come back to this moment and say, this altered the course of Luka's career positively or negatively, depending on what he does in the ensuing decade. So kudos to Boston. And again, for Luka, this is an adjustment period for him, and we'll see if he's able to do that moving forward. I don't imagine the rest of the series, but going into next season. And by the way, the good news is, if you're a Mavs fan, what was the knock on Luka about 2 years ago? I remember when the Mavs got to the Western Conference Finals, lost to my Warriors, and Luka seemed to kind of wear down in that series, in part because he's playing the same ISO basketball even when he had Jalen Brunson on his team at that point. But what was kind of the knock on Luka going in that offseason? He was out of shape. Well, Luka has put more of a concerted effort. Certainly did this past offseason. I remember seeing one offseason picture of him. He looks skinny. It's like, Luka, I think he lost too much weight, dude. I didn't put on a little bit of muscle, right? Where, you want your best player and one of the best players in the world, maybe the best player in the world. Who knows? I still got Jokic, but you can make a case for Luka. You want him be able to physically sustain the course of a full season, and he's adjusted in that regard. Like I'm watching the series. I don't think Luka's not having quite up to par the level series he wanted to have because he's out of shape or he looks tired. That's not the problem. So he has adjusted in that regard. He has listened to criticism from the Mavs and from others and said, you know what, I do have to improve. We'll see if he does it this go around. So it'll be an interesting offseason story for Luka and the Mavs. As for the series, though, it's a wrap. And I'm not going to lie to you. When Brian Windhorst said what he said on ESPN yesterday, on Scott Van Pelt, and elaborate on it this morning on Get Up, and you heard SVP and you heard others on ESPN sort of limits the fact, like, just crushing Luka and crushing Boston. I'm not saying that their commentary is incorrect, because I actually agree with just about all of it. But I think the big reason that they were ticked off is like, gosh darn it, the playoffs have been horrible to ESPN as it pertains to revenue. The Celtics swept the conference finals. They may be about to sweep the NBA finals. This is horrible for our bottom line. Like, gosh darn it, we wish Dallas would have won this game. And listen, I don't blame them. You're looking out for, you're looking out for your bottom line. Looking out for your paycheck. But I thought that was. I'm like watching these people. I'm like, I get it. And even for the fans' perspective, who we have no financial incentive unless you're gambling on the series. But I mean, last year's NBA Finals was a dud. Game 2 was interesting. Game 5 was really, really ugly, but had an exciting finish in the last couple of minutes when Denver won in 5 games. And we wanted to agree. I really thought this was going to be the best NBA Finals we've had in a while. So it has been. And listen, Game 2 was close adjacent. Last night was Boston controlled large portions of that game. Dallas went on a crazy run, played great defense in that 7-minute stretch of the fourth quarter, but ultimately the better team, especially once Luka fouled out, was able to make some big shots. Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Tatum. So kudos to all those guys. And kudos to Joe Mazzulla. So this has been a guy that I have been highly critical of since he got the job in Boston. And some of it I've tried to pull back on to a degree, because the fact of the matter is Joe Mazzulla, going into his first season as the Celtics head coach, a month before the season, or a month and a half, something like that, was not expected to be the head coach. It was supposed to be Ime Udoka, who led the Celtics to their first finals since 2010, and they came up short to the Dynasty Warriors, but they've got a great core, good momentum from last year. They finished the season strong after starting out rough in the first half. We've got momentum, and then the Ime Udoka situation happens. He's fired, and their top assistant, Will Hardy, ends up going to the Utah Jazz. So it's like, oh crap, the guy we would have turned to is gone. He's with the Jazz now. Well, I guess we got to turn to this kid who has minimal coaching experience, Joe Mazzulla, to be our new head guy. And you saw last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, where it's Boston, Miami. The talent disparity, I think most would agree, myself included, was sizable. Like, if you stacked with the best 10 players in that series, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo is going to go in there somewhere. Maybe like a Caleb Martin, but that was about it. It was a bunch of Celtics, a bunch of guys wearing green down that list, down the top 10 players of that series. And Eric Spoelstra, being the best coach in the NBA, which I believe him to be, coached circles around the young guy Mazzulla. And I was critical of that. I'm like, listen, on one hand, I'm like, I don't really expect you to outcoach Eric Spoelstra in year one as a 30-something-year-old. But at the same time, if Boston had Ime, if they had Will Hardy, if they had a guy like Sam Cassell, who ended up, me and John Rivera, shout out to John Fan Perspective Podcast, we seem to be the only ones who acknowledged that story when it happened, when Sam Cassell joined the Celtics coaching staff. But maybe those guys, maybe Boston could have won that series. Down 3-0, tie the series in Game 6, and end up getting blown out in Game 7. Does coaching impact that? Maybe. Certainly seemed to. In the situations where Joe Mazzulla was asked to make adjustments, he kind of struggled with that, whereas Spo, with less pieces, excelled at that. And in this NBA playoffs, has he, in a tight series, been asked to make a big sweeping change or a massive adjustment in a series? No, but I don't necessarily fault him for that, because I don't want you, as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't want you to screw up with anything. I thought Jason Kidd last night made a big mistake. Mid-fourth quarter, Dallas was on a run, and he calls timeout in the middle of it. It's like, and you saw Luka was like slam the ball in the court, like, what are you doing? We got the momentum. I thought that was a big mistake by Jason Kidd. So don't interfere with something that's working, which Mazzulla has not done. What I give Joe Mazzulla a ton of credit on, because we can talk about, well, Miami didn't have Jimmy, Cleveland didn't have Donovan Mitchell at the end of that series, Halliburton was gone from the Pacers at the end of that series. Dallas is, Luka's beat up, but he's playing. Dallas is fully healthy. We could talk about those factors, but the thing that I find, and I think Doris Burke and JJ Redick on the broadcast were all over this last night and throughout the series, aside from like little blips, little runs that Dallas strikes to make, last night it was a sizable run because they cut a 21-point lead down to 1. Boston's execution is darn near flawless. It reminds me in some respects of the ball movement, not as good, but it reminds me a little bit of the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. Ironically, it was exactly 10 years ago when the Spurs won their 5th championship. It reminds me a lot of that, where is the best player on the team? Is it Kawhi? Is it Duncan? Is it Manu, Parker? Like, you make a case for any of them. Duncan obviously is one of the best players ever, but he was at the end of his career, the third to last year of his historic career, where with Boston, we all generally agree, I think, most folks agree, Tatum's the best player. He's back-to-back All-NBA first team. He's some of his greatest playoff games have gotten the Celtics to a finals in 2022 in games where Brown didn't play as well. Tatum came up big for them, but Jaylen Brown's having a better series. Jaylen Brown, to me, is absolutely the front runner to win finals MVP. Unless Jason Tatum goes crazy in game 4 and Brown struggles, I'd have a hard time seeing Jaylen Brown not getting finals MVP. Right? Like Drew Holiday, he can be effective on the offensive end, but his value has and always has been found on what he does as a primary on-ball defender defensively. He is as good as they come. I think in the last decade, in this era of basketball, Drew Holiday's the best at that. Talk about Porzingis, who did not play last night. I don't think he should play the rest of the series unless he gets to like a game 7, God forbid, for the Celtics' sake. Don't mess with calf injuries. You don't want them to cause something greater and you miss all of next season. So I would not play Porzingis. But everybody playing their individual role. And basically, we're going to stack the roster with aces of their craft to a certain extent. Drew Holiday is the best in the NBA at what he does. Kristaps Porzingis, one of the best at what he does. Jason Tatum, typical kind of wing scorer, can give you 30 a night. Jason Tatum, by the way, last night, not a very efficient shooting night. 4 for 13 from 3, 11 of 26, but did lead the Celtics in scoring with 31 points. Typical wing scorer. Brown as his co-star, kind of a similar situation, but they excel at their craft. Derek White, he's going to be a defensive stopper on one end. He's going to knock down the 3-and-D guy. But a lot of guys in NBA history have won championships playing that exact role that Derek White's playing right now. Joe Mazzulla has them playing, almost, aside from a few stretches, just beautiful basketball. And as big as the Porzingis acquisition was, the fact of the matter is, in games that he misses, I think there's something like, I think I saw, if you include last night, they're like 22-4. So it's something along those lines. They've only lost 4 games when Porzingis is out of the lineup. They are still great. Al Horford played well last night, as he's been playing at times throughout this playoffs. But the Drew Holiday addition, and I said, when the Bucks traded for Damian Lillard, and Drew Holiday was obviously a part of that trade, I loved it because I'm a Dame fan. Like, Giannis is awesome. I thought the duo was going to work a lot better than it ended up working. Some of that was coaching, but some of it was also fit. It was one thing for Drew Holiday to not be on Milwaukee. But when the Celtics made that deal with Portland to bring him to the Celtics, I'm like, okay, because I'm thinking, okay, Milwaukee's absolutely, like not odds-on favorite, but I would absolutely give them the edge to go to the NBA Finals. When the Celtics made the Holiday deal, I'm like, I may have to adjust that. And I ended up, when it was all said and done back in October, picking the Celtics to go to the NBA Finals. I had them losing my Warriors. Long story. But I had them getting to the stage in large part because of that deal. Why? Marcus Smart, God bless him, not a point guard. Drew Holiday is. He's a true point who can lock you up on the defensive end. Man, is that valuable. And he's been the key, one of the keys to kind of unlocking this for Boston in terms of their success, winning 64 games, going to this point 15-2 in the playoffs. And Joe Mazzulla deserves credit for that. Listen, the impact of a coach in the NBA, if you compared Eric Spoelstra's impact in the Miami Heat, because I think he's the best coach. If you want to say Pop, Ty Lue, Steve Kerr, any of those guys, knock yourself out. The impact of those guys on an NBA team from a schematic standpoint isn't close to that of in the NFL. And Andy Reid, a Mike Tomlin, a Sean McVay, a Kyle Shanahan, those guys. But where NBA coaches find their value, Steve Kerr talked about it. I've said it ad nauseum on this show, and I will say it again. 10% of the NBA is X's, in terms of coaching is X's and O's. The other 90% is managing personalities. Boston, you see in their demeanor, they're never satisfied. There's never a sense of overconfidence with this basketball team. It's always a measured level. On to the next game. It's a little, obviously Mazzulla is not Belichick, but it's a little Belichick Patriots dynasty-esque. Not to that level necessarily. I mean, the Celtics are allowed to at least smile a little bit during their run, but it's a very business-like approach. And Joe Mazzulla sets the tone in that locker room, and Joe Mazzulla has this team playing just flawless offensive basketball and flawless defensive basketball. Keep in mind, this is a Dallas Mavericks team that cooked some of those really good, solid defenders in with the Clippers. OKC, young, fresh legs. They're ignorant. They've never been on this stage before, so they don't know what it's like to fail or succeed. They got nothing to lose. And Dallas in those last two games got whatever shot they wanted against Oklahoma City. The Timberwolves, best defensive team in the NBA. Dallas got Luka and Kyrie got whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted it. For Boston to do what they're doing, some of it is the failures and the shortcomings of Luka Doncic, and Kyrie Irving in the first two games, not last night. But some of this is the fact that Boston is a darn near perfectly constructed roster. They've taken advantage of it. So kudos to them. And kudos to Joe Mazzulla. Like, I will be at the, you know me, folks. When I'm right, I will let the whole world know. When I'm wrong, come out with me. I was wrong. Joe Mazzulla is a much better coach than I gave him credit for. I'm not saying he's like the top 5 in the NBA. He's a really, really good coach. Really good coach. Some of these, because we see teams sometimes and we saw with Boston, by the way, as recently as last year in the playoffs. And even with Ime at times, who I think Ime is an excellent coach. I think Ime is better than Mazzulla, but Mazzulla's still doing an excellent job for Boston. But we've seen, think about Game 6 against Miami. Remember when Derek White bailed them out at the end? Think about Game 7 against Miami 2 years ago when Butler missed what could have been the game-winning shot from 3. Boston had gone through some of these funks late in games where it's like, what? Do they even know what they're running? Like, it feels like Jalen's trying to save them and Tatum's trying to do something and Marcus Smart's trying to save the day. Now there appears to be more balance, and you're getting the very best, except for Tatum, from an efficiency standpoint, but you're getting the very best out of everybody in this Boston Celtics club, and they deserve massive credit for it. So, listen, when this series is over, whether it's Friday and I come back Monday to do the show, or whether the series ends Monday and I come back, well, at that point, I just come back on Wednesday at that point because there's no more finals games. We can discuss where the Celtics team ranks in NBA history. I think it's a little, I don't want to say necessarily premature to call them an all-time great team. I definitely think it's absurd that, listen, I get by the numbers. Well, they're similar to the 17 Warriors and the 83 Sixers and the 01 Lakers. They are not as good as those teams. Like, let's slow down on that. But all-time great postseason run? Oh, no question. Because as I said, coming in the finals, that, we can criticize Boston for, not to criticize them for taking advantage, but we're like, hey, come on, cakewalk to the finals. But I said, if they beat a healthy Dallas Mavericks team, given what Dallas has done and who Dallas has beat, what are you going to say now? Not only the beating Dallas, they're up 3-0 on them. So, got to give credit where it's due. For sure. I'm just curious what my assessment on Tatum is going to be when the series is over, because I got to see Game 4 and maybe a Game 5. So, we'll see. I'm not predicting Game 4 yet. I'll wait till tomorrow on Friday on game day to do that. But there you go. Also, real quick, another stat on Luka, which I find I picked Dallas for a number of reasons. One of them was in games exactly like this, close games, down to the wire. I trusted Luka and Kyrie more to get the job done in the fourth quarter than I trusted Tatum and Brown. I think I was the only one who did, honestly. That's why I was so passionate. I'm like, why is everybody not seeing what I'm seeing? Ripped Joel Embiid for his fourth quarter performance in the Knicks series back in the first round. Can we show Luka's Luka's finals numbers in the fourth quarter? 2 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, and look at those shooting splits. 20% from the field. He has yet to make a 3 in this series, and he's shooting 50% from the line. He's been nothing short of atrocious. I showed you the defensive stat earlier where 67% of the time when he's the on-ball defender, Boston goes right by him, which 67% on that stat, highest in the NBA in the last 10 years. So, yeah, it's Luka who's made a name for being clutch, and he has. He's been very clutch over the years, but this series, he's been nowhere near it. And that charge, man, it wasn't a charge. The blocking foul was brutal. You could not put yourself in that position to have to rely on an official to keep you in the basketball game. You can't. Especially, too, like, it was a block. It was. But would we, any of us have blamed, and even Mavs fans, be honest with yourself, would any of us have blamed the officials if it was a go either way? Like, if they initially called block on Luka Doncic to foul him out. But if it was go either way and you looked at the replay and you're like, that might be a charge on Jaylen Brown, if that had been the case, would you have necessarily blamed the refs? Like, yeah, but he's been talking crap to us all game for 2.5 hours, giving us hell. Let's get him out of the game. Like, we're kind of sick of dealing with it. I mean, if you tell, again, like I said earlier, if you tell somebody they suck at their job for 2.5 hours, cuss them out, make gestures at them, do you blame them for not being that sympathetic towards you? So that's another thing too that has nothing to do with Luka's game, but he's got to adjust on it. Well, it actually does have something to do with his game because he's not getting back on defense because he's arguing with the officials, and it's giving Boston wide open buckets in transition. Tatum got a couple last night because of it. So that matters. Okay. So but very much a somber topic. So carving up the context is a segment I do every midweek show. I said midweek because it's usually on a Wednesday, but because the finals is on a Thursday. And I look at a story and I try to kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of it, look at the context of it. That is why, because the show's called Carving It Up, we decided to call it Carving Up the Context. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, Mr. Prime Time Deion Sanders says, give me my theme music. On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, we pay tribute and remember the great Jerry West, who passed away yesterday at the age of 86 years old. He was reporting, according to Shams, his wife Karen was at his side. So first and foremost, before we talk about anything about Jerry West's basketball life, thoughts and prayers to his wife, to the family, to loved ones, all those that knew Jerry West. This was as beloved a man in the NBA as you could possibly imagine. People adored him. And so, listen, I saw it. By the way, we lost Bill Russell a couple of years ago. Bill Walton passed away within the last couple of weeks. So I was actually like arriving at work, felt a buzz in my phone, pulled it out, and I see the news. I'm like, oh gosh, he was 86, right? He lived a full life. But it's always when people like that, even when they do get the blessing of a long life, you're like, gosh darn it, man, like that sucks. Like they leave such an impact that it's that void is going to be there for a while for the NBA, but most importantly for his family and for his loved ones. But for Jerry West, so he's gotten a lot of love for his job as an executive, and I will get to that because I literally talked about Jerry West on Monday. I don't know how he came up, but I talked about how he's the greatest executive ever. I don't know if actually I do know why he doesn't get the credit he deserves for as great of a player as he was. You know why? Because he played in the pre-merger era. I mean, most of his careers in the pre-merger era. This is a long time ago. Most of his careers were in the 60s. He retired in 1974. He drafted in 1960 out of West Virginia. Can we show Jerry West's resume as a player? He is, to me, without doubt, one of the 15 greatest players of all time. We could show it right here. 1972 NBA champion. He was the 1969 Finals MVP, the only Finals MVP for the losing team. He's a 14-time All-Star. That is 7th all-time, tied for 7th ever. 10-time first-team All-NBA. That is tied for 4th all-time. He's a 4-time All-Defensive first-team guy. He's the all-time leading scorer in the history, I repeat that, the history of the NBA Finals, and he is 8th all-time in points per game, average exactly 27 points per game in his NBA career. So, and by the way, I think Jerry West, to me, is without doubt the 3rd greatest player in the history of his position, which is shooting guard. MJ's the greatest, Kobe's 2nd, Jerry West the 3rd greatest shooting guard to ever play the game of basketball. So I wanted to, and also too, it's almost a good thing that Jerry West played in the era that he did. And the reason I say that is because he went 1-8 in the finals. He went to 9 finals. He only won 1 of them. Can you imagine in today's often toxic ring culture, we crushed LeBron for going 4-6. Can you imagine how Jerry West would be discussed in the media today, despite taking a team to 9 finals, losing 8 times, 6 of those to the overwhelmingly better, loaded with Hall of Famers, Boston Celtics team led by Bill Russell. Jerry West, the executive, is unparalleled. There's no other way around it. He's the greatest executive who ever lived in the history of the NBA. So I can make a very strong case. The NBA, I want to make sure I'm doing this right. 3, 4. Okay. In my estimation, they've had 6 dynasties. If you want to include the Spurs in the mid-2000s, I'll say 7. But 6 to me, no doubt, slam dunk dynasties. The Russell Celtics, the Magic Lakers, the Bird Celtics, the Jordan Bulls, the Kobe Shaq Lakers, and the Steph Warriors. Now, you can argue Tim Duncan Spurs. You can make a strong case because they, from 99 to 2007, they won 4 championships. That's, you know what? Let's include them. That's a dynasty. I almost don't include the 14 championship because it's so far removed from the 07 title. That said, 6 NBA dynasties. No doubt dynasties. Half of them do not happen without Jerry West. They don't. So Jerry West, after he retired, became the coach of the Lakers a couple years after he retired, then transitioned in 1979 to an executive role. And that was the year that Magic Johnson was drafted by the Lakers out of Michigan State. That was a few years after that, after the Lakers won a title in Magic's first year, in Jerry West's first year as an executive with the Los Angeles Lakers. A few years after that, he drafted James Worthy, Big Game James, Finals MVP in one of those titles. So the Showtime Lakers, one of the key architects of that team, was none other than Jerry West. 5 rings in addition to his 1 title as a player. But he stuck with the Lakers after Magic had to retire with the HIV diagnosis. And Magic has talked about on his social media how Jerry West was just so close to him every day. And they so many tears were shed in that office when Magic broke the news to him. And they had a very, very close relationship. But Jerry West stuck through some rocky days with the Lakers. Magic was gone. Magic had retired. Kareem had retired. The dynasty fizzled out after the loss to the Bulls in the 1991 finals. You come to 1996. A guy by the name of Shaquille O'Neal, maybe you've heard of him, was a free agent from the Orlando Magic. Lakers sign him. And Jerry West, Shaquille O'Neal will tell you this story if you ever ask him. Jerry West tells Shaquille O'Neal as he signed this contract, all right, Shaq, you're going to be the next great Lakers big man. And I've got a kid, there's a 17-year-old kid out of Philadelphia, and you guys are going to win a bunch of championships together. And Shaq, understandably, was like, yeah, okay, where do I sign this? Where do I sign the dotted line, right? That 17-year-old kid, Kobe Bryant, who Jerry West saw at a private workout. It was detailed. There's a great book about Kobe called Showboat. It's a fantastic read. I highly recommend it. It's a long book, but it's a great book about Kobe and his career. And it talks about how Jerry West went to this tryout and was just blown away by this kid. This dude was getting this kid, this teenager, was getting buckets against NBA players. Kobe was drafted 13th overall by Charlotte. Jerry West orchestrates the trade to bring him to the Lakers. And I believe Kobe Bryant, personally, with respect to Magic Johnson, I think is the greatest start-to-finish Laker of all time. He's not there with that Jerry West. He's not. Jerry West saw what Kobe Bryant was going to be before maybe even Kobe Bryant saw what Kobe Bryant was going to be. There's another dynasty. Years later, after leaving the Memphis Grizzlies front office, there was a team in Northern California who were spearheaded by a skinny 6'3" guard out of Davidson named Steph Curry, who had already been drafted in 2009 before West arrived. His first NBA draft, Jerry West, there's a lot of hype around a lot of shooting guards in that particular draft. Jimmer Fredette was one of them. Remember Jimmer Fredette in college? He was a bucket getter. The Golden State Warriors instead elect to draft a kid out of Washington State named Klay Thompson. A year later, in the second round, pick number 35, they go with a kid out of Michigan State named Draymond Green. Jerry West was one of the individuals who was adamant in drafting Draymond. Oftentimes, though, when it comes to any decision-making position, that can go from a teacher in a school to the president of the United States. When you are in a decision-making position, and your decisions have consequences positively or negatively, we talk often about the great decisions or the bad decisions. We don't often talk about decisions that are not made or the moves that were not made. A prime example of that, probably the greatest move Jerry West did not make. And I remember this because I was a fan of the Warriors in 2014. 2014, the Golden State Warriors had just hired Steve Kerr and had come off a first-round exit at the hands of the Los Angeles Clippers. Steph Curry was a certified all-star by that point, but the rest of the team is like, okay, they got some good players, some young guys. How is it really going to formulate together? Nobody saw the Warriors, or few people saw the Warriors as like, oh yeah, that team could win some championships. Maybe one, but not multiple. Minnesota Timberwolves had a guy named Kevin Love, who statistically was one of the 10 best players in the NBA. And because the Timberwolves were going into a rebuild, they said, you know what? We need to move Kevin Love. We want to go into this kind of tank job for the next few years. Let's let Kevin Love go play with a better team and have a chance to compete for titles. The Golden State Warriors, one of the primary teams interested in Kevin Love's services. The deal, reportedly, to Minnesota to go get Kevin Love. One of the people included in that deal was Klay Thompson. And reportedly, Draymond Green could have been involved in that deal. But Klay Thompson was the focal point of a package that would have brought Kevin Love to the Warriors, sent Klay Thompson to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jerry West, literally, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, threatened to quit the franchise if they made the move. He said, you're making a mistake. You need to keep Klay Thompson. The Warriors smartly opted with the smartest executive in basketball history. The trade is not made, and Klay Thompson is a 4-time NBA champion and was the co-star of an all-time great who led a dynasty. Oh, and by the way, the biggest move in that dynasty that was made, Kevin Durant. Yeah, Jerry West had something to do with that too. He helped in the recruiting process to bring Kevin Durant to the Golden State Warriors. He finished his career with the LA Clippers, orchestrated the deal that brought Paul George there, signed Kawhi Leonard, essentially pulled him from the Lakers. Who knows? If Kawhi ends up on the Lakers, maybe LeBron has 6 rings. Who knows? The smartest basketball executive of all time. But why was he that? Why was he as great of a player as he was? Because we've seen guys be great players and horrible executives. I think about Isaiah Thomas. I can think about Michael Jordan. There's a lot of guys who have really, really struggled in front office roles. Why was Jerry West not just an all-time great player, but the greatest executive of all time in basketball? Why was that? Well, simply put, he is a prime example of something that I'm a massive believer in. When we think about successful individuals, what is the first, if I ask you the question, what do all successful people have in common? You would probably say, and you wouldn't necessarily even be wrong in saying work ethic. They work hard. Well, yeah, they all do work hard. Like that's, you need that. If you don't have the work ethic, hard work breeds talent, and talent doesn't work hard. You got to be able to put the time in to your craft and what you're aiming to do. I would make the argument that that's the second most important quality to every successful person. What is the number one quality of that? All people who are successful and have sustained success, what do they have in common? They're constantly looking forward. Walt Disney had a great quote, keep moving forward. It's simple, but oh, is it profound. Jerry West was not, and there's a lot of folks that fall in this category, and I'm not even saying they're necessarily wrong for feeling it, but there's folks who maybe when they get to Jerry West's age or even a lot younger, who are stuck in their time, from their day, this is how things are, I'm not going to move off of it, and they become rigid, and there's kind of a cap on how successful they can be at what they're aiming to do. There's nothing wrong with nostalgia, but nostalgia never gained anybody an ounce of success. Jerry West was not tied to the 60s, 70s NBA. He was tied to the present and the future. What can we do to get better today? That's what made him a great executive. That's what made him successful as he was with the Showtime Lakers. That's what allowed him to make the trade that shocked LA. You're trading Vlade Divac, who was a good player at the time, by the way, for a 17-year-old high schooler? Are you out of your mind? I think Jerry West, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he was probably right in that deal. And the rest of us probably missed on that. And obviously, keeping Klay Thompson as opposed to moving Klay for Kevin Love. Klay Thompson's now a future, no doubt, first ballot Hall of Famer. And the Golden State Warriors wind up being a dynasty, end up having, in my mind, the greatest team ever assembled in the history of the NBA, the 2017 Warriors with Kevin Durant. Yeah, Jerry West got him the Golden State as well. The two greatest teams of all time in my, or two of the three greatest teams of all time in my mind. 17 Warriors, 01 Lakers. Jerry West put both teams together. That would be like if somebody in the NFL constructed the 80s 49ers, the 90s Cowboys, and the 2000s Patriots. That's essentially what Jerry West did. And so it was his constant love for the game, his competitive spirit, and always looking forward. There's nothing wrong with looking back, appreciating the good times in your life and the things that made it special. But if you're seeking to accomplish a certain goal, I'm sorry, it's not going to help you at all. Jerry West was not stuck in his ways. Jerry West constantly evolved, saw where the league was going, saw where basketball was going, and adjusted with it, used his basketball expertise, and is the greatest executive in the history of the NBA. Not to mention, by the way, just, kind of on the side, one of the 15 greatest basketball players who ever lived. His loss is a big one to the NBA community, to the basketball community. Certainly as a Warriors fan, I am very saddened to hear of his passing. As a basketball fan, I'm saddened to hear of his passing. And Jerry West, what a life, man. 86 years. Kudos. Jerry West passed away at 86 years old, and he will be remembered as he should be, as a true basketball legend. So yeah, for this week's edition of Carving Out the Context, just wanted to pay tribute to Jerry West. And by the way, too, also, when we talk about the most influential players in NBA history, or most influential people in NBA history, we usually talk about the players. We usually start with Wilt. Wilt was the first NBA player to physically dominate the game in a way nobody had ever seen before. He's the first guy to do that. We think about Dr. J, who was the first superstar. I mean, played a lot of his career in the ABA before the ABA and NBA merged, but had like a style and a swagger that he brought to his game that was thrilling to watch. Magic and Bird saved the NBA. Literally saved the NBA. The finals were on tape delay in the 70s. The NBA exploded in the 1980s, spearheaded by Bird's Celtics and Magic's Lakers. We think about Michael Jordan, who was so influential in the sense that being able to empower players as it pertains to endorsements and what they could do in business off the court, away from basketball. Michael was one of the first people to truly take advantage of that wave and create opportunities for other players. LeBron James, you talk about a guy who took advantage of MJ's sort of business acumen, but said, you know what? As it pertains to on the court, in terms of basketball, in terms of trying to win championships, we're not going to leave it to the front offices. We're going to leave it to the players themselves. If I want to go to a better situation because the situation I'm in stinks, I'm going to do it. LeBron got championships in Miami because of it. Kevin Durant got championships in Golden State because of it. A lot of guys have benefited off that decision. In 2010, which LeBron caught crap for, but let's be honest, he was right in doing. And finally, Steph Curry, who literally changed the map and how we view the game of basketball forever. He changed the way the game is played, coached, and analyzed. One guy did that. So those to me are the 7 most influential players in NBA history. But if we had to do a Mount Rushmore of the 4 most important figures in NBA history, the most important players or figures, I think David Stern's in there because along with Magic and Bird, he sort of helped save the NBA. You can talk about MJ in terms of the NBA experience's greatest popularity in the 1990s. MJ spearheaded that despite, I'm sorry, not the greatest basketball. 80s basketball was far better than the 90s, and 2010s basketball was far better than the 90s as well. Jerry West has to be on that Mount Rushmore. He has to be. He has to be. Folks, the Lakers are not the brand that they are today without Jerry West. They were the Minneapolis Lakers. They were named, I think, after the Great Lakes in Minnesota. Thus, the Minnesota Lakers, they transitioned to Los Angeles. They're the Los Angeles Lakers. They were losing money. They were in a bad situation financially. Jerry West, with his success, with the team success, elevated the franchise into a respectable team, and now they're one of the most recognized brands in professional sports. Jerry West was kind of the first guy to do that. So just his importance, his impact in the game cannot possibly be overstated. And I'll tell you what, he's going to be missed. He is going to be desperately missed by NBA fans and by those who knew him best. So rest in peace, Jerry West. As we conclude the segment, we have, do we have it? We have some breaking news. So this just broke. According to Adam Schefter, the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence have reached an agreement on a 5-year, $275 million extension, $200 million guaranteed, $142 million at signing. So there you go. So Trevor Lawrence gets the bag, gets paid by the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is according to Schefter. And it's funny, he just put out a tweet a second ago talking about the 2021 first-round QB draft class. It says, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 pick, $275 million extension. Number 2 pick, Zach Wilson, Jets, traded to Broncos. Number 3 pick, Trey Lance, 49ers, traded to Cowboys. Number 11 pick, Justin Fields, Bears, traded to the Steelers. And number 15 pick, Mac Jones, traded from the Patriots to be Trevor Lawrence's backup with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Trevor Lawrence, 5 years, $275 million. Do the math in, screw it. I won't do it in my head. I'll do it in the calculator. That is $55 million a year. I believe that would exceed Joe Burrow or at least tie him in terms of average annual salary, which we know it's all about the guaranteed money. It's all about incentives. But of the 275, $200 million of that is guaranteed to Trevor Lawrence. So look, my reaction to this, I agree with it. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have been one of the worst organizations in the NFL for some time, one of the worst run organizations in the NFL for some time. And so for them to land on a guy who's easily the best quarterback they've had, which isn't saying much because they've had some pretty bad quarterbacks. Mark Brunell is the only close guy to Trevor is from a talent perspective, from a production perspective. But listen, frequent viewers of Carving Up Live know how I feel about this guy. I think he's one of the greatest quarterback talents I've seen coming out of college. I think Caleb exceeds him, but Trevor, what he was able to do out of Clemson freshman year, beating Alabama as badly as he did in the national title game as a true freshman, great talent. And again, in the NFL, I have defended him at length because year one, and you got to drink water. Year one, Trevor has a horrible first rookie season, but keep in mind, one of the worst NFL head coaches, one of the greatest college coaches, one of the worst NFL coaches, though, Urban Meyer, didn't even survive his first season. He was so bad. Players hated him. It was a mess in Jacksonville. His second year, once he sort of finds the reins with Doug Peterson, the Jags go from, I think they were either 3-6 or 3-7, end up winning the division, making the playoffs, and completing one of the greatest comebacks in playoff history, down 27-0 to the LA Chargers. And Trevor Lawrence leads the Jaguars back to win that game. I think it was, what was the final score of that game? I think it was like 31-30, something like that. So Trevor led that second half comeback. They end up losing to the eventual champion Kansas City Chiefs in the division round. And last year, where Trevor's caught a lot of hate, Trevor's caught a lot of backlash, here's the fact of the matter. When Trevor Lawrence was healthy last season, his last healthy moments, the Jacksonville Jaguars in an AFC with Josh Allen, the Bills, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, the Dolphins, who were on a roll at that point, the Browns, who were destroying everybody defensively, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, who, my friends, was the number 1 seed at that point when Trevor Lawrence was as healthy. It was the Jacksonville Jaguars, led by Trevor Lawrence. They played the Bengals on a Monday Night Football game. Trevor injures his ankle. The Jacksonville Jaguars, being the poverty franchise they are, can't even get a cart out onto the field to get him to the locker room. The man had to literally be helped off the field on his feet with a throbbing ankle. He ends up coming back the next week against Baltimore, gets concussed in that game, or it was either the Baltimore game or Tampa Bay, one of the games, gets concussed in one of the games, then he injures his knee. So the guy is a shell of himself physically, And you're shocked the Jaguars falter out of that? He's the only reason they were there. It's the reason I believe Trevor's still absolutely a top 10 quarterback in this league, is absolutely capable of getting the Jaguars to use the title of the Kelsey Brothers podcast, to new heights. That's what he's capable of doing. He's, again, his issue to me has been fumbles. He's got to cut back on the turnovers as it pertains to fumbles. We've seen Dak Prescott used to have a fumble problem. He doesn't anymore. Like, that's something that can be worked on. But listen, I think Doug Peterson's an excellent coach. I've been a fan of him since he was in Philly. And I think Trevor is a generational talent at the quarterback position that has been put in an organization. Ask yourself this. Does Trevor have a Super Bowl ring in his finger if he's in San Francisco? Seriously. Brock Purdy's a good quarterback, but if Mr. Relevant can do it, you're telling me Trevor Lawrence can't do it? It's the same guy. And by the way, it's the very reason there's two big Trevor Lawrence when he's compared to either of these two players. That really bothers me. When he's compared to Justin Herbert. Oh, Herbert's obviously better than Trevor Lawrence. Ask yourself this. And I love Herbert. For the record, I was a massive Herbert fan out of that 2020 class. Loved him. Still love him. And he used to do great things with Jim Harbaugh. But he's never won a playoff game, and his only playoff appearance, he was the quarterback. Not necessarily saying the game was his fault necessarily, but he was the quarterback of the Chargers when they blew a 27-0 lead. 27-0 to Trevor Lawrence. That did happen. This isn't a figment of our imagination. That did happen just a year and a half ago. Or really about a year and a half ago. And Trevor Lawrence to CJ Stroud. Now, I didn't love CJ out of Ohio State 2023, but I really liked him. I did like him better than Bryce Young. The tape says that. I do struggle, though, if CJ Stroud is some folks have him in the top 5, some have him as like absolutely better than Trevor. Ask yourself this. CJ inherited a terrible situation in Houston. This was not a terribly well-run organization until they got Caserio and Nick Caserio from the Patriots and hired D'Amico Ryans. Has a great season. Texans win a playoff game, lose to a clearly better team in the divisional round. And he is the man, which he is, by the way. How are we then going to for Trevor Lawrence? He inherits, like CJ, a horrible organization in the AFC South. Year 1 gets Urban Meyer as his head coach, as opposed to D'Amico Ryans. Year 2, once he gets an actual NFL head coach and Doug Peterson, gets the playoffs like CJ, wins 10 games in the division like CJ, wins a playoff game when he was the underdog like CJ, and loses to a clearly better team in the divisional round on the road like CJ. And the last time Trevor was healthy in an AFC that is overflowing with great quarterback play, it was Jacksonville in December when Trevor was last healthy, that had the number 1 seed in the conference. Those things did happen. So I think the Jaguars, like when they was like, oh, so the Jaguars pay Trevor. I'm like, it's Jacksonville. Who the heck are they going to get to replace Trevor? It's the best guy they've had easily in their history. And so Trevor had the leverage. Trevor had the momentum. And so listen, kudos to him. He's worth every penny as far as I'm concerned. And it's up to the Jaguars right now to put the requisite pieces around him. I like the kid they drafted out of LSU. Thomas, I think is the kid's name, the receiver out of LSU. I think he's got a potential to be really good. But losing Calvin Ridley was a big loss to the division rival Titans. So we'll see what the Jaguars are able to do this year. I think they're absolutely good enough to be a playoff team. Like, I'm seeing playoff prediction in the AFC, and the Jaguars aren't even mentioned. Like, I think they're – last time Trevor was healthy, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC, for what that's worth. Those are some comments. John Rivera, my man, I shouted you out, by the way, earlier on the show, John. We were the only guys who thought the Sam Cassell hiring would make a difference, and who knows, maybe it has. But John says Lawrence is a good QB, and they will get paid. Yeah, I mean, again, it's by the way, it's the reason I think Dallas, the Cowboys are just out of their gourd for not paying Dak. Like, yeah, you're going to upgrade from Dak Prescott, given your history of drafting quarterbacks, because outside of Aikman, it ain't great. It ain't great. So, but by the way, you know what this does? This just raises the price for Dak. Because I think it's generally agreed upon that Dak is a better QB than Trevor. I would put him over him today, but a year ago I wouldn't have, as the biggest Dak fan in the world. So take that for what it's worth. Let's talk about another quarterback who was certainly once not only elite, but once awesome. and a 4-time league MVP. His name is Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers, as Key and Peele would famously dub him at one point. So here's the thing. So Aaron Rodgers is not at Jets minicamp, mandatory minicamp. And Robert Saleh, the head coach of the team, said that it is an unexcused absence. And a report said that Aaron is at an event that is important to him. Now, people speculate, well, could that be like maybe, I don't know, the birth of a child in his family or a loved one? Could that be, God forbid, a family situation that's dire? Whatever the case may be, it could be, but then why would Robert Saleh say unexcused absence? Like, you'd think Aaron would call, like, hey, man, there's a situation going on. Like, I need to be there. And they'd be like, hey, cool, Aaron. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, worry about your family, worry about your loved ones, come back to us in a good situation. But then it'd be excused. So the fact that it's an unexcused absence tells us that it is not anything, presumably, of concern. What I find absolutely rich as it pertains to this conversation around Aaron Rodgers was the fact, keep in mind, this is mandatory minicamp. Mandatory. You get fined for when you're not there. And usually the only guys who are not at minicamp are dudes who are holding out for a contract. By the way, there's a guy on the New York Jets right now that is currently looking for a contract, Hassan Reddick, who they traded the pass rusher, who's with Philly, who traded him to the Jets. He's looking for a new contract. He's holding out. That is very, very normal. CeeDee Lamb's doing it in Dallas. It's very common. So, but Aaron's not holding out for a contract. So why is he gone? Well, we'll find out eventually. I don't think anybody knows for certain. I've heard of speculation that it's a vacation, whatever it is. What we do know is this. As long as it's not a situation with his family or loved ones, as long as it's not I want to make that abundantly clear. As long as it's not a family situation or something he absolutely has to attend. Aaron Rodgers was in a situation coming into this week, or knowing that this week was going to happen, where he had to choose between said event of choice and mandatory minicamp. Mandatory minicamp, which, might I present this, for a team that Aaron played 4 snaps for last season before he blew out his Achilles, a team that has reconstructed its offensive line, a team that has added Mike Williams, an injury-prone receiver. You'd think receivers Aaron would try and build a rapport with. Would he not have learned from 2 years ago when he didn't build a rapport with the receivers in Green Bay, and it didn't go terribly well? And when Jordan Love did, he had an amazing second half, got the Packers to the playoffs, which Aaron couldn't do his last year there. All of that. Aaron had to make a decision. Non-football event or football event. And he chose the non-football event. Now, that's well within his right to do. It's not the worst thing a player's ever done exactly. What it is, though, is a direct and obvious contradiction from a declaration he made to the media, to the New York media, and almost calling out the franchise. He's pretty good at that. That, hey, football first, guys. Take a listen. Aaron Rodgers' exit interview in January. Just take a listen. Aaron Rodgers. What is it about, football, and we focus on football, we focus on other stuff. Aaron, what you got to say?
Anything that doesn't have anything to do with winning needs to be assessed. So anything in this building that we're doing individually or collectively that has nothing to do with real winning needs to be assessed. Everything that we do has to have a purpose too. When you step in the building, there's intentionality with everything that you do. And it's not a half the time thing, it's not a sometimes thing, it's not a most of the time thing, it's an every time thing. If you want to be a winning organization, man, to put yourself in position to win championships and be competitive, everything that you do matters. And the bullshit that has nothing to do with winning needs to get out of the building. So that'll be the focus moving forward.
That would be like me saying that short, bearded white guys from the South shouldn't do sports podcasts. Okay, so the BS that has nothing to do with winning needs to be out of the building. And that can't be a sometimes thing. That can't be a most of the time thing. That has to be an every time thing. Well, every time thing, mandatory minicamps, I would assume, is with that. And, if you look at other teams around the NFL, they've got their franchise quarterback. It looks like, despite a contract situation, it looks like Dak's at Cowboys OTAs and Joe Burrow coming off an injury not OTAs, mandatory minicamp. Looks like Burrow is at mandatory minicamp, and Mahomes coming off of 2 Super Bowls, despite having great chemistry with all of his receivers, seemingly, except for Hollywood Brown. And Russell Wilson's at Steelers OTAs or mandatory minicamp. Josh Allen's with the Bills, and everybody's there except for Aaron Rodgers. Interesting. That's really interesting. Almost as if this is like a recurring theme with him. Almost as if this offseason he has caused attention, unneeded, I might add, to himself and to the New York Jets to a large degree. The fact that the Jets kept Nathaniel Hackett. Well, Nathaniel Hackett didn't get to work with Aaron Rodgers. Don't give him a fair shake. Okay, Hackett was awful in Buffalo as the OC. He had one good year in Jacksonville. The rest were awful. He was terrible. He went bad with the Packers. The Packers put up great offensive numbers when Nathaniel Hackett was the OC of the team. Matt LaFleur called the plays. He did. He was there. What's his name? He was there because Aaron Rodgers liked throwing darts with him, reportedly. And the Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett, and he didn't survive his first season, and the Jets were a train wreck offensively. Well, they had Zach Wilson. They had Joe Flacco last year, who played for the Browns, and Joe Flacco had some pretty good games in Cleveland. Why? Because Kevin Stefanski is a great coach. Hackett is not. They keep Nathaniel Hackett because he's buddies with Aaron. Keep some of these guys because they're tight with Aaron Rodgers. Also, the fact that since making that quote, he walked back an implication that Jimmy Kimmel is a pedophile and is on the Epstein list. Neither, certainly the latter, is objectively false. And that was after the football first. Get the BS that has nothing to do with football out of the building. To get that out of here. This is the same Aaron Rodgers who went on Tucker Carlson, I should say Russian propagandist Tucker Carlson's podcast and talked about conspiracy theories related to Pat Tillman and the United States government. Typical Aaron Rodgers. This is the same Aaron Rodgers who it was reported by multiple outlets, confirmed by Aaron himself with Tucker Carlson, that he was on the short list of candidates of options to be Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate in the 2024 presidential election. So what, in week 6, week 7, does he have to say, hey guys, can't attend practice tomorrow. I got to be at this debate here with Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley. Assuming that's the 2 Trump picks. Huh? That call me crazy. That doesn't seem to be about football. Yeah. Keep in mind also that Robert Saleh's on the hot seat this year. Robert Saleh's coaching for his life right now to try and remain the head coach of the New York Jets. And a lot of guys, the Jets are looking to get paid, like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, and put in the work, put in the time, put in the effort, showing up to avoid fines, to build camaraderie, team chemistry in mandatory minicamps. And guess who's not there in a non-contract related situation? It's almost as if the last quarterback to not attend minicamps for a non-contract related situation was Aaron Rodgers 2 years ago in Green Bay. Almost as if this is who he has been throughout the course of his career, and particularly within the last few seasons. Football is not first for him. By the way, that's okay. If it's not first, then retire. Or at the very least, don't project and lecture about how this is the way things are done to win. Aaron, you haven't won a Super Bowl in a decade and a half. Almost. So this is not Tom Brady coming to Tampa, being hard on guys, Mike Evans, being hard on Chris Godwin, Gronk, AB, Leonard Fournette, some of these guys who had never won before. Really talented players, but had never had that winning culture instilled there. Tom instilled that and won immediately and made the playoffs the other 2 years he was there. Listen, nobody's going to fault Aaron for the Jets not reaching expectations last year because he played 4 snaps. Of course, nobody would fault him for that. But for roster construction, for Nathaniel Hackett being an employed offensive coordinator of the National Football League, for Tim Boyle, who I'm not kidding, does not deserve to be in the NFL based on merit because he's buddies with Aaron. Randall Cobb, same thing. Although Randall was once good, he's just not the player he used to be. It's It is the lack of self-awareness and the true, I'm going to say it, narcissism. Aaron is the guy. We all know that person in our life. And a lot of them are, as Aaron is, a conspiracy theorist. There's that one person, we all know him, family, can be anybody, who walks in the room, views themselves as the smartest person in the room, views you as you should fall in line right behind them in whatever the discussion or topic or objective is. And it should also be mentioned too, well, the Jets, they can deal with this because Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. No, he's not. We could show you the stat. I used this a couple months ago, and I saved it for such an occasion as this. I don't usually save a ton of graphics, but I'm like, just in case I need to bring it back up, I'm going to bring it back up. So Aaron didn't play last year. We're not going to fault him for that. His Achilles blew. But if you look at Aaron Rodgers, we could put up the stat right here. In the last 22 games in Green Bay, 36 touchdowns, 12 picks, completes about 66% of his passes, 96 passer rating, throws for 218 yards per game, is 11-11, 0 300-yard games, 0 playoff wins. Now, at face value, 96 passer rating, the completion percentage is solid, touchdown interception ratio, pretty good. At face value, you're like, this is a good quarterback. But for two things. We've never viewed Aaron as a good quarterback. We viewed him as a Hall of Fame legend, frankly, as we should. He's a 4-time league MVP. And also, those numbers, last 22 games, and I did the segment on this a couple months ago, those mirror Baker Mayfield stats. And to a degree, Russell Wilson stats in the last 22 games. His last 300-yard passing game, folks, was, if I'm getting this correct, it was either week 13 or 14 of 2021. That's 2.5 years ago. Now, maybe he would have had a 300-yard passing game with the Jets, maybe, but would he have had time to be able to pull that off behind that Jets offensive line? Because I can tell you this, same receivers in Green Bay, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. Jordan Love didn't miss a beat in the second half of the season. He was great. Statistically, one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. With the same roster that Aaron led to an 8-9 record and missed the playoffs. So this is the utter audacity to come out and say, hey, guys around here got to fall in line. It's got to be a football first operation. Guess who's not at minicamp for an event that means a lot to him? Now, again, assuming this isn't a family thing, a true important situation that Aaron needs to attend to, that is my caveat. If it's not that is typical Aaron Rodgers. Do as I say, not as I do. And it's been a recurring theme his last few years in Green Bay, going to the Jets now, and Aaron Rodgers is a lot of things. A self-proclaimed Swiftie is one of them. And Taylor Swift, who has obviously many popular songs, one of them goes like this. I'm not going to sing it, by the way. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Oh, it applies to one of her Swifties, Aaron Rodgers. Let's look at the comments here. Jets fan John Rivera, shout out to him, is in the comments. Aaron equals Kyrie when it comes to off the field stuff. Yeah. John, he's getting fined. He's getting fined. Wink, wink. No, I do think he's getting fined. I will say this. Listen, I don't think anybody in the Jets love this. I think Robert Saleh is the most irritated by this of anybody. Because, again, he's going to year 4. Like, most guys with Saleh's resume do not make it to year 4. They just don't. Usually they get canned after year 2, year 3. But because Aaron missed last year, the Jets front office like, okay, we'll give you one more try with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, which is fair. Like, I don't know if I would have necessarily done it, but I understand where the Jets are coming from there. Saleh's like, I got to do everything to keep my job. And my most important player isn't here. Okay, so I have to kind of try and win this power struggle. So I do think he will get fined, John. I would be shocked if he isn't. John said, heard a close friend had a get-together. Okay, if that's the case, then that could be rescheduled. Listen, it's one thing to, like, it'd be one, if it's a vacation, which some are reporting it's like a vacation like South America or something. If this is a situation where before the schedules for mandatory minicamp and the offseason at large comes out, Aaron schedules the week of June 11th, or technically June 10th, because we're talking about Monday, the week of June 10th, schedules an event, a vacation, to get together, whatever. and has no idea that minicamps is this week, that's fine. Like, we're not going to fault Aaron for that. Didn't know when the offseason was good, when the mandatory minicamps are going to be. But once he knows when mandatory minicamps are supposed to be, then he has to make a decision. And he's well within his right to do whatever he's doing, of course. Just don't lecture us, and certainly don't lecture your teammates who are showing up there, putting in the work that you said that everybody needs to be doing, and you're not there. Although one could say it is maybe a classic form of irony. We need to get the BS that isn't about winning out of the building. Ironically, Aaron's out of the building. The other guys have showed up. And by the way, I'm not going to make the Jets out to be this great winning culture exactly, but as far as showing up to work, they're there. He's not. And 2 years ago in Green Bay, it was an identical situation. I mean, this is precisely why. For years, I argue as a Brady guy, there was always like, oh, Rodgers is better than Brady, all this. And there was always a sentiment, if Rodgers had Bill Belichick, he would have left. Brady lasted 20 years with Bill. Rodgers would have left after 3. I mean, there's a book, again, I've talked about in the show before, The Dynasty, which they ended up making a documentary about. The documentary was viewed as kind of like an anti-Belichick production. The book was not that. I don't know if the book mirrors the documentary. The book was not that. The book I thought was very favorable to Bill, to Kraft, to Brady, the 3 architects of the Patriots run. And the book went into detail about how Bill would absolutely eviscerate Tom Brady, almost embarrass him. His character, his dick, all of that in front of the team, as to say, if I can do it to Tom, rest of y'all better get in line. Like a drill sergeant perspective. Now, yeah, that that approach just doesn't work today. That's part of why Bill didn't last New England, unless he didn't adapt to the modern times. Aaron wouldn't have lasted in that. He just wouldn't have. By the way, a lot of guys wouldn't have, but the idea that Aaron was going to be more successful than Tom in New England is lunacy. I mean, Tom took over in freaking Tampa Bay. Not the 49ers or the Packers or the Steelers or a great franchise historically. The Ravens went to the darn Buccaneers and won a Super Bowl in a pandemic season. And by the way, was last night, and then I'll move on to my last topic regarding JJ Redick. Was last night not a great night for Boston? My gosh. I'm a Red Sox fan, by the way. Go Sox. The Red Sox come back from 4 runs down to beat the best team in the National League, the Phillies. The Celtics win Game 3 of the finals. And Tom Brady last night gets his number retired in what was a really cool. The Patriots outdid themselves, man. It was a great ceremony. Someone said this is GOAT stuff for Tom. This is part of the reason why he's the GOAT. On a night where the Red Sox are playing at Fenway, more importantly, the Celtics are playing in the NBA Finals, not in Boston, but they're in the NBA Finals. Tom Brady sold out Gillette Stadium in June. That's GOAT stuff right there. Now, some of that's because Patriots fans know they're not gonna see that level of success ever again, but certainly not. I mean, 6 Super Bowls in a certain span. That's may not be seen in the history of the NFL. Maybe the Chiefs do it, but the Patriots, that's usually not done twice by a team, or never done twice by a team. But yeah, it was a cool ceremony for Tom. Very deserving of it, and it was a great night for the city of Boston last night for sure, and a good day for Trevor Lawrence too, as I talked about earlier. Man, getting paid 5 years, $275 million. Again, they would have been out of their gourd to not pay him that money. Last topic, sort of a continuation, but with new information on the Lakers coaching search. So it should be noted we're 13 days out of the NBA draft, and the Lakers do not have a coach. So it feels like it would be kind of important to have the head coach in communication with the scouts and the GM, and the Lakers don't have that because they've been a poorly run operation for a decade. So JJ Redick, according to Woj, and I want to get the information correct on this, is going to go in for another interview this weekend to be the Lakers head coach potentially. And Woj said, quote, this is his tweet, JJ Redick will formally interview for the Los Angeles Lakers coaching job this weekend, and a strong performance is expected to move him to the forefront of the franchise's search. So basically, if JJ does well in the interview, he goes back to being the front runner. So I'm going to continue what I said on Monday's show and elaborate on this as it pertains more to JJ as it pertains to the Lakers. So JJ Redick, now Joe Mazzulla is like a kid by NBA coaching standards, but JJ Redick is 39 years of age. He's going to turn 40 in a couple weeks. So he's got all kinds of time to take a head coaching job. What we know about certain destinations and for certain coaches, it's one thing to fail in Milwaukee. It's one thing to fail with the Atlanta Hawks, or it's one thing to fail, I don't know, with a good franchise like the Houston Rockets or the Jazz or a team like that, the Phoenix Suns. It's another to fail at the Los Angeles Lakers because of the level of scrutiny, because of the level of attention on that franchise. If you bomb there, all of your flaws, all of your shortcomings are on a pedestal and have a megaphone attached to them. That's not the case in Utah, in Phoenix, in Orlando, in small market franchises. That is very much the case, more so than any franchise with the Lakers. JJ Redick is the hot candidate on the market. He would be doing himself a far greater favor if he stays with ESPN, calls another NBA Finals with Mike Breen. Doris Burke continues to do a fantastic job, calls a bunch of games next year in the regular season and in the playoffs, calls the finals, and you're going to have teams because the NBA head coaching carousel is it keeps them moving. There's always a bunch of openings, and there's occasionally one or two pretty good jobs. This is not a good job. If LeBron's a Laker, which if JJ's hired by the Lakers, LeBron's going to stay there because we know LeBron's relationship to JJ. But LeBron's gone in a year or two. By that point, is Anthony Davis in his prime? Is he more physically brittle? At that point, now the Lakers don't have very many assets. They draft actually pretty well over the last decade. They just can't develop talent to save their lives. See Brandon Ingram, see Josh Hart, see Julius Randle. Long list of examples. So they're not a well-drafting team. They're not a well-owned and operated team. They're an organization. See the hiring of Rob Pelinka. See the ties to the Rambis, Kurt and Linda Rambis family. The Lakers are identical to the Cowboys in how they do business in that it is a mom-pop shop. They're going to keep it all internal. They don't seek advice or how to run their business from anybody who has not at one point in their life been associated with the purple and gold, and that is a horrible way to run business. You're better off bringing an objective voice who sees the franchise for what it is rather than what you hope it to be and get to work. By the way, Jerry West, perfect example. Look what we did in Golden State. Jerry West had no ties to the Warriors, and he's instrumental in the Warriors being the dynasty that they were. So with Rob Pelinka being in charge, the fact that because he didn't want to add an extra year to the Ty Lue deal, we see who the coach Ty Lue is, ends up blowing it on Ty Lue, getting Frank Vogel, who's a good coach, not Ty Lue. Then you fire Vogel, you bring in Darvin Ham, who I don't care what the record says was an abject disaster as it pertains to relating to players, as it pertains to making adjustments. The guy is not a good head coach. Maybe he'll improve in the future, but right now he's not a good head coach. JJ Redick, who is a risky hire. He is. But you kind of know what you're getting with James Borrego. Nothing, anything against him. He's kind of in that Frank Vogel tier. Like, good coach. He did a decent job in Charlotte. But do you see, if you just see it, just think in your head, Lakers fans or NBA people, just close your eyes for a moment. Think in your head, the Lakers winning the NBA championship. And you see him getting the trophy on stage, and you see LeBron, and you see AD, and you see Jeannie Buss, and Adam Silver, and you see James Borrego. You don't see James Borrego. It doesn't feel that way. You see Phil Jackson. Frank Vogel felt a little weird, but LeBron was closer to his prime. AD was closer to his prime. That Lakers roster was very well put together to the credit of Rob Pelinka. But ever since then, it's been a disaster. When it comes to hiring coaches, when it comes to, again, running it back with, which again, in fairness, I defended, but looking back, running it back with the same roster, I mean, the exact same roster, unless they're like a special all-time team like the 2017 Warriors and the 96 Bulls, tends to be a mistake historically in sports history. So that was a mistake on their part. But if you're JJ Redick and you fail in Los Angeles, well, now all your biggest flaws are under a microscope. Oh, he didn't make, he tried this lineup that didn't work, and this adjustment wasn't made, and he didn't call a timeout here to stall run. All those little things. Whereas if he's in like Cleveland, nobody cares if JJ Redick doesn't work immediately in Cleveland. Whereas in LA, they've got a 1.5, 2 year window. As long as LeBron's there. Because with AD, AD's a great player, but AD cannot be the best player in a title team. I think we've seen that. He was great in that 2020 finals run, but folks forget how phenomenal LeBron James was, especially in the NBA finals. So I think JJ Redick, again, we could show you the list. I think if we have it, since Phil Jackson of Lakers head coaches, it's not worked. Mike Brown didn't work. Mike D'Antoni didn't work. Byron Scott was a disaster. Luke Walton wasn't very good. Vogel got a championship, but fizzled out at the end. I think was scapegoated because of the Westbrook experiment. And Darvin Ham, despite the record, did not connect with players, did not make requisite adjustments. The Lakers aren't good at choosing head coaches. So as I've said, after the Hurley thing went through, when it would appear that Dan Hurley appeared to manipulate the Lakers and manipulate Rob Pelinka into getting an extension from UConn, that they're going to do what they've been doing for a while, and that's getting it wrong at the head coach spot. It's the very reason I keep saying this, and I think I'm on an island on this. What is LeBron James's incentive to stay with the Lakers? Well, LA. Guys, he's got a year or two left. He can come back to LA. He clearly loves it. Like that is LeBron has said so himself. People around him, he loves LA. He could play a couple years elsewhere, come back to LA and enjoy life as a billionaire living in Los Angeles. Many do, with his family, with his kids. If it's winning, Philadelphia's got better pieces than the Lakers do. I would make a strong case Golden State has more pieces than the Lakers do. I think the Heat. Now, if the Heat lose Jimmy Butler, it's a different story, but could that be a discussion? Potentially. There are plenty of teams out there that would love to have LeBron James. They give him a better opportunity to win than the Lakers. Money. He's a billionaire. What's $5 million less potentially in another organization as opposed to with the Lakers? Not to mention that he won't have to worry about not off-court stuff, but upper managerial stuff with Daryl Morey or with Mike Dunleavy Jr., who learned from the great Bob Myers. He won't have to worry about this stuff. He can focus on basketball. He can focus on business. And when he's done playing, he can come straight back to LA. And then eventually be the owner of the team in Vegas. So LeBron's going to enjoy a great retirement ahead of him at this point. And by the way, if it's for stats, he's the all-time leading scorer. That's the greatest accomplishment statistically in the history of the NBA. So the whole point, I would think at this point of him playing, is championships. The Lakers objectively do not give him the best chance to do that of teams that would be interested in LeBron's services. So the Lakers are going to mess this coaching search up like they always do. JJ would be much better off waiting a year, seeing how the NBA, sort of landscape shifts over the next 12 months, then picking an organization that, hires their coach sooner than 2 weeks before the draft. That's an idea. That's what I would do if I were JJ Redick. So, again, and I think JJ could be a good coach. I do. I think, we talk about relation to players. He knows the game very well. Listen, he's never coached in his life. That's the risk. Steve Kerr never coached. Mark Jackson, the last two coaches of the Warriors, had never coached at the professional level or really at all, unless you would talk like youth basketball potentially. But Mark Jackson built the foundation in Golden State. Steve Kerr exceeded it into a dynasty. I'm not saying JJ Redick will be that, by the way. Like the Pat Riley's the next Pat Riley. Well, let's slow down on that. Pat Riley's one of the best coaches who ever lived. But do I think he'd be a good coach? Do I think he'd be better than Darvin Ham? Yeah, absolutely. I'd hired him immediately if I was the Lakers, but they're the Lakers. They managed to screw these up. Screw these things up often. This looks like a report. Dan Wojcicki, I think is how you say his name, who covers the Lakers, who does a really good job, by the way, for the LA Times. This is a quote from this, just came on my Twitter feed. Some members of the Lakers don't think it's a, quote, absolute necessity to have a coach in place by the NBA draft. This is insane to me. Quote, while having a coach in place by the draft is ideal, it's not viewed as an absolute necessity by some inside the Lakers organization. The team is facing major decisions this summer with its roster beginning on draft night, when the team could combine the number 17 pick with first rounders in 2029 and 2031 in a trade. That's, man, perfect timing, NBA Central. I got that tweet from NBA Central through Dan Wojcicki, a report from Dan Wojcicki. Bingo, that's the Lakers. They don't view it as a necessity to have a coach by the NBA draft. Like we always see when the number one pick, for example, when Wemby's drafted by the Spurs, what happens? Next day, he's in San Antonio. He's got his Spurs hat on. He's got a nice suit on, and they take a picture. He's got his jersey, and you see, I'm forgetting the guy's name that runs the Spurs. I'm forgetting his name. It's not coming to my mind right now. But guy runs the Spurs, and who else you see with Victor Wembanyama? You see Greg Popovich. When I'll use my Warriors as an example. When Brandon Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis, both who were excellent rookies last year for my Dubs, when they had their opening press conference as the new draft picks for the Golden State Warriors, who's there? Steve Kerr was there. That's amazing to me. They don't view it as a necessity to have a coach in place by the NBA draft. That is remarkable to me. They fired Darvin Ham in early May, like the first couple days of May. Father's Day is this weekend. They don't have a head coach. That's amazing to me. That is amazing to me. At any rate, that is all the time I have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving It Up live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We are on the path to 5,000 subscribers. That is what we are attempting to do as quickly and as fast as we can do. So if you have not subscribed, hey, just takes a couple seconds. Hit the big red subscribe button down there, and boom, you're part of the Carving It Up family. If you have subscribed, thank you so much for the love and for the support. It means everything to me and everyone associated with Carving Up Live. Please be sure to tell your friends about it, your family about it, everybody you know about Carving Up Live, except for your sleeping cat. That, my friends, I would not advise. Outside of that, tell everybody, tell your friends about Carving It Up, tell your family about Carving It Up. Get the message out there, man. Let's grow this thing. And just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. You can find us at the Grid Network, where we dare to be different. And check out online articles by my man Patrick Brown on the Grid's website as well. Definitely check out our content creators. And I'm my man Tim Barnard, host of the Boston Sports Summit on the Grid. I was actually on a show on Sunday night for Game 2 in the fourth quarter. Is over the moon. EJ Savage, by the way, Boys of His Own, also at the Grid, is a huge Celtics fan. So those two are going to have either a great weekend with the Celtics winning the title tomorrow, which I will predict Game 4 tomorrow and talk about the lead up to that game, or following Monday's Game 5. If it gets to Game 6, now that'll be an interesting conversation. But I wouldn't be shocked if it got to a Game 6, but I'd be kind of surprised. All right. I will see you guys tomorrow, again, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, some Game 4 NBA Finals talk, as well as whatever else is going on in the world of sports. We will see you then. Please be sure to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. Doesn't matter where you live politically, right, left, center. This is an issue that impacts every single one of us as Americans on an everyday basis. And no matter what anybody on either side of the aisle tries to gaslight you on, oh, it's not a problem at all, or, oh, there's only one solution to the problem, both are BS. It's a huge problem that has a number of nuanced solutions to it, but we got to put the right people in office to address it. So let's do what we can and demand change. All right, I will see y'all tomorrow. Game 4 Finals talk. Can't wait. I really hope it's not a sweep. I don't know. I honestly don't know who because I picked the Mavs. I believe in pick integrity. The Celtics are going to win the series, like based on history, 3-0 comebacks, but I do hope Dallas wins tomorrow. I don't want to sweep. Nobody except for Celtics fans wants to sweep. I will see you then, y'all. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Oh, by the way, Steph and Clay are still the GOAT backcourt. Man, stop with that. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.